Hello, false shock. It's day 5 in the Big Brother household. Welcome to episode 5 of The Short Grass, the Kildare Nationalist Sports Podcast. We have a packed programme again this week, including an in-depth look at the championships in Kildare, the LGFA championships, Kildare players on international duty, golf, racing and paddle tennis. Welcome as always to Ger McNally, to Richard Commins and unofficial Tommy O'Connell. I'll tell you, these lads will give the contestants and the traitors a good run for their money. Welcome, lads. It's a look at the preliminary quarterfinals in the Joe Mallon Motors Senior Football Championship, first of all.
Yes, Pat, yeah, I suppose the big news, obviously, in Group B, that win for Sarsfields over Naas, the long unbeaten run for Naas finally comes to an end, stretching back 31 games and just 1 week short of 5 years, going back to 2020 when they lost to Stourbridge in the group stages. And what a fantastic performance it was for Sarsfields. They really had to win this game. It was obviously a game that meant nothing really in terms of the result, with both sides already assured their place in the quarterfinals. But it was a game that meant a huge amount for Sarsfields in the end, because it's a win that really lays down a marker now for the more serious things to come later in the knockout stages. They were superb right throughout the game. They restricted Naas to just 1-7, which is a real achievement against a side carrying 3 starting Kildare forwards. And Sarsfields just looked much more hungrier on the day. And the question marks now will be: is that a performance that is kind of that shows the position that Naas are in, or is that just a Naas side who took the foot off the pedal, knowing that they were already through to the quarterfinals already, and it didn't really make a difference to them whether they won that game or not? But it does pose some question marks, I suppose. It's a very difficult championship to win, successive championships. It took over 70 years for a side to do a 3 in a row. Naas have gone 4 in a row, so to go to 5 in a row, we're almost into uncharted territory. They obviously have a very inexperienced manager, a rookie manager, albeit coming off such a legendary playing career. But there's definitely going to be question marks now about Philly McMahon, how he gets his side to respond for the remainder of the championship. On the flip side of that, Sarsfields are so well organised. Vinnie Walsh had them really revved up, and they were very good in defence. The 2 Ryan brothers were superb back there. Ben Lokman scored very well. Ryan Carney as well continued his good championship, and all around it was an excellent day for Sarsfields. And I suppose the big question for them now is that their peak, or can they continue to replicate that level of performance now right across the remainder of the championship? And if they do that, they're going to be a really tough side to beat, and they're going to be right thereabouts come the end of the championship.
Can Sarsfield repeat it, Tommy?
Yeah, well, what I said last week, and just thinking back to it, I'd said that when it doesn't really matter, can they produce that performance? And in fairness, Richard did jump in and he said that but what if they do? What if they do produce that performance, and what that could do? I think it's the manner of how it went about at the weekend as well, that Sarsfields outplayed Naas all over the field. They mauled them at the back at times. Naas just did not get a minute on the ball. At the same time as well, Naas did get plenty of opportunities to get their shots off. Balls dropping into goalkeepers' hands, balls dropping wide. So I think the players need to have a look at themselves as well. A lot of big names there. Nobody near them. Ball dropping into Cottlemore's hands. It's just not good enough. It was. Could you question the attitude there? Was it a bit too casual? But the intensity that Sarsfields brought, I thought it was great to watch, because it was everywhere. That level of fitness that they showed, that intensity that lasted throughout the whole game, and it also it wasn't like Sarsfields won and it just petered out. There was a bit of spice to it. There was a lot of little niggly things going on off the ball. The Sarsfields lads were letting the Naas lads know all about it, and they weren't afraid to let them know, and that includes at the final whistle as well. We'll have a look at the bracket in a minute, but going forward, it could obviously benefit Naas. It could gel them. People like us now are speaking about how have they come back to the pack a little bit. They'll surely love that. To go out and they'll prove everybody wrong the next day. But it's up to Sarsfields keep that level. But those young players that I mentioned last week that have no fear, they all stood up again at the weekend with a lot of the experienced players. So it's great to see. It's great for the championship. Simple as that.
Quick reaction from you, Richard.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit loath to pay too much heed to a final group game. But I have to admit, from what the guys have alluded to as well, Sarsfields were fantastic on the day. They really went into Naas. There was one clip at the end which I think showed the mentality as well. And it was one Sarsfields player, when they were shaking hands at the end, there was one Sarsfields player refusing to, or ignoring a Kildare County player on the Naas team when they were shaking hands, just, laying down a bit of a marker. And there was that bit of niggle about them. And I think it's something, I think Sarsfields have really improved this year. There's that injection of youth, but also I think Vinnie Walsh is a very underrated manager. I think he did a great job with a tie. And Sarsfields will be a much more dogged, more physical, more difficult team to beat this year. And we've seen it already in terms of their form. In terms of Naas, I think they're struggling for any sort of pattern under Philly McMahon. And I think part of their issue, which I think he even alluded to in the first interview we did with him after a match, I think it was after the league final, was that he has so many players trying to figure out, who slots where, what's the best way to set them up, who's even in a match day panel and who's starting. There's a lot of question marks there, and I don't think they've quite got a handle on that yet. They haven't quite got it right. But they've got time, and they've got, they'll possibly meet Sarsfields again later on. They're now, set to potentially meet in the final, and probably would be most people's pick to meet in the final. And I just wouldn't write Naas off yet. They've got so much talent in that panel, and Philly McMahon does have a lot of experience, and he's got some good people with him. They just need to find a method of playing. They need to find the right 15. And just a little bit go back to basics, because they've been attacking quite well up to now, but just from a defensive perspective, they've been very loose even before the game against Sarsfield. So plenty of question marks there, but I certainly wouldn't be writing them off at this point.
They've had kind of, if you go, sorry, Pat, just very quickly, they've had kind of, really strange year. If you go all the way back to the start, there was the Rory Gallagher fiasco. Then obviously Joe Murphy left at kind of very short notice when the Carlow job came up, and he was enticed away to his native county. Then they had a management team, by all accounts, more or less in place, who I think even spoke to the squad and kind of had a lot of things, even, got down to fixtures and stuff, looking ahead, that they wouldn't be available before they were readjusting fixtures and all that sort of stuff. But then suddenly had an about turn at the very last moment, maybe past the last moment, and went elsewhere. Then Philly McMahon came in at very, very short notice then as well. So it's been far from ideal preparation, and no matter how good they are and how good they've been over the last 4 years, that sort of disruption to your preparations has to have an impact. And maybe we're seeing something of the fruition of that. But I think, as Richard was saying, you couldn't read too much into that game all the same, and it'll be interesting to see the response from it.
Yeah, that's Group B, and Sarsfields are on top, Naas second, and Maynooth third, with Raheens in fourth place. And we had a question: will Raheens reach the final inside 5 years? Well, that probably will tell you that it might be difficult for them. So Sarsfields and Naas top the group, or Sarsfields top the group, Naas second. Maynooth are in a quarter final. If we look at Group A, then Richard, did it go to form, you might say? Selbridge, Athy, Johnstown Bridge, Lahorenko, in that order. Athy back to, I suppose, their winning ways again. They've been a big performance against Johnstown Bridge last weekend. Yeah,
and that was the big question. Well, two big questions for me coming into that one. You probably Selbridge and Lahorenko went, largely as you would expect, maybe a bit tighter than you would expect, but there was less riding on that. But the two big questions for me were: could Johnstown Bridge replicate what they'd been doing in the earlier games, particularly the performance against Selbridge, because they do tend to blow hot and cold over time, and I'd love them to put in 2 or 3 big performances in a row. The second question was whether Athy could recover their form after the very disappointing performance against Selbridge. Good and all as Selbridge were that day. I think both questions were kind of answered in that Athy just, they roared into that game, and they had it over by half time pretty much. So, that answered that particular question. But at the same time answered the Johnstown Bridge question in a way, in that, no, they didn't put together another performance of the like of which they did against Selbridge. And You know, I think we learned a lot about both teams' championship credentials in that, you know, I'd really love to see someone come out of the pack, and maybe Johnstown Bridge looked as if they might be that team this year, like Clane did a couple of years ago. But you know, on this performance, you couldn't really see them maybe breaking into that semi-final quartet that looks set to be Southbridge, Athy, Sarsfield's and Ace again. Athy very, very good. Colin Moore, an outstanding.
Colin Moore, yeah, outstanding.
19-year-old, I think he is.
Yeah.
8. I know some of them were from frees and what have you, but 3 goals and 8 points for a fella that age. And
yeah, but it was his overall play as well. He had an outstanding game as well as scoring. You know, he took frees and the penalty and all of that, but still his display throughout the game was absolutely outstanding. I have to say. Yeah. So that means that Selbridge, Athy, Johnstown Bridge, and Clougharenco. So Johnstown Bridge will be in a quarter-final. Looking forward then to Group C then, Tommy. Clane and Moorfield obviously was the standout game everybody was looking forward to. And it turned out to be quite a high-scoring game, 321 to 412 in favour of 14-man Clane.
Yeah, and in fairness, I was watching that game, and when the Clane player got sent off, I said that's it, because Moorfield were going well at the time as well. It was funny the reaction of the Clane midfielder. I can't remember which one it was, but if you look back on Clubber, he's in the shot, and obviously the incident happens off camera, but you can see the Clane midfielder's looking at it, and he just turns away and puts his arms in the air. He saw it. So whatever happened in that box happened, and the umpire was obviously correct. So, but the way Clane kicked on in that second half was very impressive, and they needed that. It was good for them. You know, there's so many question marks over Clane for the past couple of years and over some of their individual players, but to step up against a really tough Moorfield team. I mean, we've seen it so far in this championship, how difficult Moorfield are to turn over, and how well Moorfield did against Naas in the preliminary round as well. Mm-hmm. And Clane just didn't give them a minute, and they defended brilliantly. But obviously, you know, Shane O'Sullivan kicking into gear this year, probably this year, he has been a bit quiet. You know, a lot of attention has been on Mackey, but to see Shane putting up that score, I think was it 111 maybe. I mean, that's 110. Like, that's brilliant. Like, I mean, to see something like that, but that'll give Clane huge confidence because they're going to need it. Moorfield, you know, a bit of a kick in the teeth for them. After, you know, for a large part of the game, playing against 14 men and either not figuring out how to manage that extra man or not figuring out how to manage Clane. You know, so, you know, they'll have to have a bit of a think now going forward. But, you know, they've had a decent year so far as well. So we'll have a look at the bracket in a second, see how it goes. And then obviously Kilcock getting the job done against Allenwood. I had said last week that I thought Allenwood had better forwards, and that would stand to Allenwood because Kilcock might be over-aligned on goals. As Richard, I think, said that goals win games, and of course Brendan Gibbons popped up with his 4th goal of the year. He's just when he's moved in
9 goals in 3 games.
Unbelievable.
For relegation threatened. So that was just where I was coming from last week. Was
but you were right. You were 100%.
I was right. Well, stop clock and all that, you know.
But the way Kilcock, that's a huge tool for Kilcock. Now, obviously, it doesn't matter now, but like, you know, but even when you look at the likes of Kildare, you know, Brendan played so well at times for Kildare this year, and moving him inside, that kind of tactic shouldn't be beyond some county teams as well. I know it sounds a bit simplistic, but he went in and he caused carnage because he's brilliant in the air and he's a very good footballer as well. So like he the way he took his goal. So listen, Allenwood are in the relegation final. Kilcock got the job done. Fair play to them.
That's it. And then, Ger, finally, another tight affair between a team playing Cara. This one was between Cara and Carbery. Late win there for Cara again. And then the other one, Easttown, probably a little bit of a surprise after Confi's performance against Cara, but Easttown always have a game in them. So they're safe. Confi are in relegation final against Allenwood. But Cara, Easttown, Carbery and Confi, that's the way Group D finished, Ger.
Yeah, and fantastic for Cara to win all 3 games. I mean, that's a wonderful achievement for us, and to win those 3 games, and especially when you're winning 2 of them by very narrow margins. They only defeated Comfy by a point as well, and similarly so against Carberry. But it's fantastic for them to be into a quarter final now and into the knockout stages on the back of that run of form. But yeah, you'd feel a little bit sorry for Comfy. They've been very competitive. I think maybe a little bit like St. Kevin's perhaps in the Intermediate Championship as well, in a relegation final without ever looking completely outclassed or looking like a side who was really, really struggling. But at the same time, those narrow defeats are mounting up, and they'll go in now to that relegation final against Alan Wood. And well, anything can happen in a relegation final. Carberry as well, I suppose they're a little bit unfortunate as well. They've been in a couple of narrow games as well. Narrow defeat to Eastdown last time out, a 1-point victory, and their dreams are supposed to do something special in their 100th anniversary year comes to an end as well. But yeah, a special mention too for Eastdown. We spoke about them at the start of the year, and they were looking like, as if they could really get themselves in a bit of a relegation mess, but they've battled out quite well now, won 2 games in a row in that group, and went to the preliminary quarterfinals. And it wouldn't be beyond them to really put it up against Johnstown Bridge now, with a bit of form behind them, and some of their key players back available as well. So yeah, that was been a great group. There's been some great games in it, round 2 and round 3 in particular, and it's been really narrow competitive games, and just full credit to all teams involved, really.
Nice little link there, because Gerard, the preliminary quarterfinals are on this weekend. In game 1, it's Johnstown Bridge versus Eastdown. That's on Sunday in St. Conleth's Park at 3:45. Cedar St. Conleth's Park. And in match 2, it's Moorfield versus Maynooth on Saturday in Cedar St. Conleth's Park at 7 p.m. The winners of the Johnstown Bridge Easttown game will play Sarsfields, and the winners of the Moorfield Maynooth game will play Selbridge. In the other games, it's Cara versus Athy, Clane versus Naas. That's for another day. But Johnstown Bridge versus Easttown, Richard, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I've tipped Easttown for the last 2 weeks, and they've come through for me. So third time could be unlucky. It's a tricky one. I think both of these are really good games in terms of they're not much more than 50-50, either of them. Johnstown Bridge are probably slight favourites, given that they were in a winners group. We still look back to that performance against Selbridge that they had. So, and they've got Daniel Flynn back. I noticed at the weekend as well. Right. So he's back available. They've got a lot of 2-pointers in their armory. Dara Sloan, for one, Sam Doran, then you've got Paul Cribben, etc. So I think there's plenty to still. I know I was probably a little bit down on them in terms of the earlier comments about their performance at the weekend, but I think when it comes to them and Easttown, you might just shade. Johnstown Bridge might just shade it in the betting. I haven't looked at that. Easttown, to be fair to them, are a dogged outfit. I mean, they were 2 goals and 2 points to no score behind against Config after, I think it was like 10 minutes, even less at the weekend. And you'd feared for them at that point with a relegation decider potentially on the line for them, but they came back superbly in that game. They have an absolute weapon in Niall Commins in terms of long range free kicks and 2-pointers. He got one from, we had it down as it must have been 60 meters out, playing with the wind into the town end in Newbridge, to be fair, but 60 meters off the ground straight over the bar. And he got another one from play as well. Part 2, he got a 2-pointer as well, and he was fabulous for them at the weekend. So I'm kind of talking Easttown up a bit here again. I'm not sure I'd tip them on this occasion. I think I'd probably edge at Johnstown Bridge, but that's by no means a foregone conclusion in that game.
Richard, do you want to take a guess on the betting?
I'd say Johnstown Bridge are reasonably strong favourites in the betting.
Yeah, so Easttown are 9-2, Johnstown Bridge are 1-8.
Well, that's ridiculous. I would have suggested. I'm maybe I'll take a trip down to whoever that bookie is.
All right, so a narrow chip there for Johnstown Bridge. We'll expect it. Tommy, I was about to say Moorfield versus Maynooth. Is that going to extra time and maybe even penalties?
That should be a cracker. I've been building up Moorfield kind of a good bit this year because of, again, I just think they have been extremely impressive, and some of their, like if you see Adam Tyrrell this year, the form that he's showing, probably a throwback to a couple of years ago. And then Evan O'Brien, even at times last week against Clane, even when Moorfield were really up against it, every time O'Brien got the ball, he looked really classy. He really is a good forward. Maynooth, I mean, I was thinking about it this morning, and I was just thinking that Maynooth just really can't be written off because, and I'm not only talking about this game, which might sound like I'm tipping them for this game, but I was looking at the results and kind of their performances of late, and also they have Neil Flynn returning from injury. He came on the last day with about 15 minutes to go, scored a 2-pointer. So that's huge, obviously. But they also have Owen Donlan returning. He hasn't featured this year. He only featured the last day for the first time in the championship, and he scored 2-1. So when we watched him a couple of times, maybe against Naas, and a lot of pressure would have been on the likes of Paddy Manny, and that a lot of ball going to him, and a lot of expectation on his back. Now you have Neil in there, the return of Owen Donlan, who probably, I think he had a bit of a broken year last year, but the year before in 2023, he scored 4-6 or 4-7 in the championship. So he's a real target man to have in there. The form of Kieran Flanagan, which we've spoken about a lot on this pod over the last couple of weeks as well. So I think they should be quietly confident coming into these knockouts because things seem to be falling quite well for them. And you wonder what that defeat to Clane last week could do to Moorfield. And Moorfield, there's not going to be any Moorfield team that are going to be mentally weak, in fairness, when you look at the characters that they have involved in the squad. But it'll be really tight. Again, looking at the betting, there's nothing between them in the betting. So Patrick Power obviously knows the crack as well. He actually has Moorfield as slight favourites, 5-6 compared to 11-10. So it is extra time, Pat.
So quickly for you, Jared, would you call the two games?
So the Rosclavin derby there as well. Leinster winner as a player and a manager, with Moorfield going up against his own club team there now with Maynooth. And of course, he has family links to Maynooth there as well. So it's a really interesting game, and probably don't have much more to add than the two lads would have been saying. Probably have Johnstown Bridge a slight favourite against Easttown, but you wouldn't be hugely surprised with either result. And then it's a toss of a coin with Moorfield and Maynooth. Moorfield were down a couple of players, so I think against Clane, where they Aaron Masters and Ryan Houlihan as well. So
I was going to say that they were.
Yeah, they had those couple of.
I was at that one, and a bit like Naas, I didn't think Moorfield needed to win that one as much as Clane did. From my perspective, they put in a good shift in the games before that. Clane were kind of iffy, and Clane seemed to be a team that needs a bit of confidence, and that will certainly give it to them. But you'd wonder, like Moorfield went into that with, as you say, Ryan Houlihan was out, Aaron Masterson was out, James Murray didn't start. And I just wonder if they were knockout games, with everything riding on it, would those players have started? I don't know what the nature of the injuries, and we'll see maybe this weekend whether they play. But I just think Clane needed to win that again, a bit like the Sarsfields one. And the other thing for Moorfield, and I'm being very devious here, and I'm sure they weren't thinking along these lines, but if I were Moorfield and I saw by winning the group I was playing Naas or Sarsfields in the quarterfinal, I might have had a look at Selbridge in the alternative quarterfinal and said, we'll be happy enough with a preliminary game, gives us an extra game, and we'll probably beat Maynooth, and then we're playing Selbridge, and we fancy ourselves a bit more against Selbridge than we might against Naas or Sarsfields in the quarterfinal. But that would be terribly devious, and I'm not like that.
Richard, I hope you're not planning on going into Neeson's for a pint anytime soon.
No, I'm not.
Okay. We will say then that it's Johnstown Bridge versus Easttown in the first. No, that's the second actually, but it's game one. It's the Joe Manamotor Senior Football Championship preliminary quarter final on Sunday at 3:45 in Cedral St. Condas Park, and in game two, which is on Saturday, it's also in Cedral St. Condas Park at 7 p.m. Moorfield versus Maynooth. The winners of game one will play Sarsfields. The winners of game two will play Selbridge. Cara versus Athy, and Clane versus Naas will make up the semi-finals. And of course, all those games will be on Clubber TV, as indeed is the quarter-final of the hurling championship, the UPMC hurling championship on Wednesday evening. That's between Selbridge and Kyle Dove. Right. Team of the week, lads, in the loading and lifting Kildare forklifts Kildare Nationalist Senior Football Championship Team of the Week, and Ger McNally will read it all out.
Yeah, thanks again to Darren Marr and the team there in Loading and Lifting for their sponsorship of our Kildare Nationals Teams of the Week. But yeah, starting with the Senior Football Championship, Moore in goal there for Sarsfields. Part of that excellent win for Sarsfields. Dylan Morrow of Kilcock, Portage Spillane of Athy, and Keane Shanahan of Clane in the full back line. Dino Donoghue of Selbridge is on one wing with Fionn Gillon of Maynooth on the other, with Shay Ryan of Sarsfields placed at centre back. Shay was kind of just following whichever next man was closest to him, like the Derek Irwin, and that he did a great job in the back line for Sarsfields in that win. As too did midfielder Ty Cowie. He's in midfield alongside Dan Lynham of Cara. That would be a giant midfield partnership if it ever came to fruition. Further forward, Colin Moran, probably the player of the week with that outstanding 3-8 against Johnstone Bridge. Dara Stores, again, a key player in that victory with the winning score against Carbery for his team. And Barry Kelly of Athy completing that half forward line. Into the full forward line then, Owen Cully, a regular in our teams this year of Carbery, of course. Last time, of course, his team exited the championship this year, but definitely Owen has laid plenty of memories with his performances. Shane O'Sullivan of Clane then at full forward, an outstanding individual display in that win over Moorfield, and Eaststown's Portick Toohey then completes the lineup.
Yeah, and Richard, anybody unlucky to lose out? Plenty of debate. Plenty of debate.
I mean, this week I think was probably one of the toughest. I mean, Tommy probably can attest to that, as he kind of administers a lot of these and ultimately has the final pick. I'm joking, everyone. I'm joking. There were a few.
I don't have the final pick anyway.
I mean, I mentioned Commins of Eaststown before at midfield. A lot of heavy competition around there. I think for Clane, Adam Fanning was excellent as well. He scored, I think, 2-3. But one, like Brian McLaughlin, people might look at the score sheet for Clane and see he only scored a point this week, whereas normally he's up around 7 or 8 points. But he laid on so much of those scores for Shane and Adam. He was playing kind of around the middle to half forward. So he was very good as well. I mean, there's loads of others you could talk about here. A few more Sarsfields could easily have got in there. Just even from what I saw of the games.
Yeah, what about Barry Kelly, lads? Week in, week out, year in, year out, he just puts the work in, and it's good to see him getting a nod this week. He'll put his body where others won't even go 10 yards away from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Barry actually looks better this year than he has in the last couple of years. He's probably been slightly unlucky because the standard is so high for these teams of the week, and we do look at lads, obviously the obvious ones that put up the scoring, and but we, in fairness to the team, they do look at the individual performances of likes of Linkmen and that. But I think Barry this year is just finding an extra kind of a level because he's so focused on making the runs off the ball. If anybody ever watches the tie, Barry, you'll hear Barry before you'll see him make the run, because he makes these diagonal runs, he pulls defenders out, and he creates the space for the likes of Colin Moran, the likes of the midfielders coming through, and he screams for the ball. He absolutely screams for it. So the defenders have no choice but where's that lad after? Oh, we may go after him. It opens up space. So he's going to be a huge player for a tie this year, lads. There's going to be a lot of focus now on young Moran. And obviously the likes of Niall Kelly and that, but Barry Kelly will be a big player for a tie.
Yeah, it's good to see Shay Ryan doing so well again, Ger. Obviously, he had a challenging year this year, but he's back to seem to his best position, and certainly his best form for a while.
Yeah, well, that's the key for me. I think back to his position, he probably could have been included in the fullback line. He was kind of a man-marking job, really, more or less, on Derek Irwin, and kind of restricted him to very, very little there as well. So, yeah, I think that's his best area of the field. I know he's been tried in different positions. He was wearing number 12, and he's often played kind of out of that wing-forward position, but I think he's much more at home in that back line, and he was a key man. And his brother Dara, probably another one unlucky not to get into the team as well, got his trademark 2-pointer as well coming forward, and he was probably a more natural number 6 for Sarsfields in that game. But yeah, could easily be either one of the Ryan brothers in there.
So that's it. That's the Loading and Lifting Kildare Forklifts Kildare Nationalist Joe Manamoto Senior Football Championship Team of the Week, and lots of debate from those of us who were selecting it. I'm sure there will be debate for those of you who are watching it as well. Right, moving along then to the National Electrical Wholesalers Intermediate Football Championship, and there were lots of permutations and combinations that could have happened all here in what was it, Group A? It was Rathangan, Milltown, Ellistown and Straffan following victories there for Milltown over Ellistown and of course Rathangan over Straffan. In Group B, Sallins, Castledermot, Round Towers and Ballyteague. Ballyteague dropping out there, don't go any further. Good game between Sallins and Towers. Sallins 20 points, Towers 10, but despite the scoreline, it was a good game. And then in Group C, St. Lawrence's topped the group. 2 Mile House coming next. Again, Kilcullen and St. Kevin's. That was a tight group. Kevin's probably feel unlucky there. And then I suppose the one that really stood out, I suppose, Leixlip, Suncroft, Nurney and Monasterevin. Great battle there between Monasterevin and Suncroft in the final group there. Leixlip had their big win. And there was a Stewart's inquiry, Ger, in relation to a goal scored for Leixlip.
Yeah, absolutely. Us reporters don't get away with anything anymore. Got are the days now of getting a scorer wrong, particularly a goal scorer wrong, with Clubber, of course, providing video evidence. And yeah, we were very happy to correct our records when one Leixlip player got in touch with us as well and had the video evidence to support what he was saying, which was probably the most important thing. So I know some of these players to be keeping an eye on Tommy's top scorer charts as well. So important to get these things right. And yeah, absolutely, when we are mistaken in our reports, of course, we operate without replay, so it can be difficult at times to spot things and when you don't get a second look at it. So that's our excuse in the press box anyway. But yeah, if there are video evidence, we're always happy to rectify things and make sure that Tommy's top scorers are as accurate as absolutely possible.
Yeah, people were writing off Suncroft earlier in the year, but they've come back well and performed well. But you know, they had a decent run at it in the end, you might say.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody as happy doing a report on KFM as Seamus Dillon when this match is coming through. Happy at the end, I should say. He sounded a little bit nervy at various stages through the match because Suncroft, they were, I think, 7 points ahead on a couple of occasions and they just couldn't shake Monasterevin off. Monasterevin kept getting, the scores to get back within 3 or 4, and it was only in the last kind of 5 or 10 minutes that Suncroft eventually pulled away. And unfortunately for Monasterevin, and I'm sure we can remember not so long ago, they were Leinster Intermediate champions. They were intermediate champions again, was it in 2019, and played senior football in 2020, I think, or thereabouts anyway. So for them to be slipping into a relegation battle and either them or St. Kevin's, two really great clubs to drop into junior is unfortunate for them. But yeah, great battle for Suncroft. And I was at the Leixlip and Nurney game. Leixlip did as expected, and Nurney, they were probably listening into Seamus reports there on KFM as well, because they obviously their fate was out of their hands when it seemed that Leixlip were pulling away in the final quarter. So they were anxiously awaiting news from Angard Park that Suncroft had held on to beat Monasterevin, that preserved their Nurney status in the intermediate championship, and their key moments were the last couple of minutes of round 2 against Monasterevin when they turned that one around. That was a huge win for Nurney, and is enough to keep them up. So yeah, well done to those. But I suppose the unlucky team really of the weekend were Kilcullen. It's probably so difficult in the championship. Kilcullen got a huge win for St. Lawrence's. I think that our headline in the Nationalist was about winning the battle but losing the war, and that's probably what it felt like for Kilcullen. They got that wonderful win over their near rivals, St. Lawrence's. It's probably a long time since they've beaten St. Lawrence's in a championship game, if ever before. So to get that win was fantastic, but then it wasn't a win by enough, and their championship is over. But I suppose they'll be very happy to have got 2 wins in the group stages, so beaten St. Lawrence's, and they were in relegation trouble going into the last round, so they'll be delighted to have avoided that as well. But it is a bit unlucky when you see them on 4 points exiting the championship, while there's 2 teams in Group B on 2 points that progress. But I suppose that's just the way of the nature of the group stages.
Larry's, I suppose, would be happy that they topped the group. Sure.
Yeah. Look, I don't think St. Lawrence's have been firing as they would like. It was obviously they started off with that defeat against Ellistown. Aside coming down from senior championship, automatically you kind of fancy them as to be one of the favourites to go back up straight away. But Richard, I think, was just starting off one of his deep dives into one of his statistical points as he starts. He hasn't come up with a full answer yet, but he's gone back 10 or 15 years there so far, and he hasn't found a side who rebounded straight back to senior after relegation in the following year. So it is a difficult task, and St. Lawrence's are probably a side who are maybe a couple of years away from their very best. That they've got a lot of kind of talented 18, 19-year-olds coming through that maybe need a year or two in the intermediate grade to really progress. But having said that, they're in the quarterfinals, and once you're in the championship, you have every opportunity. So certainly not ruling them out. But that quarter-final against Castledermot, that is a real mouth-watery tie as well. Castledermot will probably be eyeing up St. Lawrence's a little bit as well. Castledermot returned to form with a big win over Ballyteague last Thursday. Seems a long time ago now, but yeah, that was a big win for Castledermot, and that's another local derby to really keep an eye out for. But St. Lawrence's probably feel they've played all their local rivals now, with Cullen there and Castledermot next as well. So plenty of local interest in those games as well.
Richard, Group A then, Rathangan topped the group, but Milltown are there just on behind them on score difference. Ellistown, last year's junior champions, in third place, so they'll move forward as well. Maybe disappointment for Straffan.
Yeah, I mean, Straffan were gone essentially anyway before last weekend, but still put in a decent performance. I didn't see either of these games on up to that. But just judging by the scoreline in the match reports, they put in a decent performance against Rathangan there. Ellistown also, like, only losing to Milltown by 5 points. They may not feel it themselves, but that was a good performance from them, particularly when they struggled so much against the other, I suppose, informed team in the group, Rathangan. They chipped a fairly heavy defeat there, so they'll be happier with their performance against Milltown there. I think here you've got two of the real contenders for the group, for the championship, in Rathangan and Milltown. So it'll be interesting to see how they go on later. Rathangan actually have, in many ways, probably got the best draw going forward, because you've got Salins, Milltown, and Leixlip all on the same half of the draw. So Rathangan might fancy a final this year, and they've certainly been putting in the performances to justify that so far.
Yeah, I saw them the previous week as well. That they dip in out of games, so that might be a challenge to them. They need to be consistent over the hour. Milltown lost a player after about 19 minutes through a direct red card. So they continue to play very well, and some great performances throughout the way. Ellistown will be happy that they're in a they're safe for another year, and in a I suppose a knockout stage. And let's look at those knockout stages. It's the preliminary quarterfinals this weekend in the National Electrical Wholesalers Intermediate Championship. In match 1, it's Ellistown versus Suncroft. That's on Sunday in Cedral St. Conleth's Park at 2 p.m. And then in match 2, it's 2 Mile House versus Round Towers. That one is on Saturday in Cedral St. Conleth's Park at 5:15. The way it will work then is Salins will play the winners of Ellistown and Suncroft. Rathangan will play the winners of 2 Mile House and Round Towers. And then in the other two semi-finals, it's quarterfinals rather, it's Leixlip versus Milltown and St. Lawrence's versus Castledermot. Tommy, we didn't look at Group B, Tommy, so you might as well take us through that.
Sorry, just to throw it back up. Castledermot, in fairness, I mean, the big thing when Castledermot played Ballyteague last week was that, from a Castledermot point of view, there was this number of 6 that they had to win by 6 or more to overtake Ballyteague to get into the preliminary round. That was the big target for them, but they started like an absolute train. They were brilliant last Thursday night. And then as the match went on, a few of us were chatting, and we were like, oh, they actually have Round Towers in their sights now if they can win by 14. And they just kicked on. At one stage, I think they were 16 points up, and Ballyteague actually pulled it back down. So in the end, it was 13, which for me, doing the permutations, especially when I'm down on the sidelines or in the terraces surrounded by people, that was the worst case scenario. That's when teams are tied on points and score difference, and the calculators were out. There was lots of people buzzing around me waiting for confirmation. So I was fairly confident that Castledermot had moved into second on points scored. And Richard, I think, had confirmed it as well via WhatsApp. So for them to knock out Ballyteague and to overtake Round Towers, they're going to take serious confidence from that after taking two bad defeats in the previous games. they looked like they were just playing with abandon. They were flying up the field. They just flew at Ballyteague, and maybe they're realising that they're better than maybe they thought they are. At the moment, a few of their big players stepped up as well. We'll have a look at Team of the Week, but a couple of other players probably could have made it in as well. So their quarter final against St. Lawrence's really is a big game, and Castledermot will definitely have Larry's in their sights now, because maybe where they thought that this championship season wouldn't go the way they thought after the way the Salins and Towers games went, even the Suncroft game, because Suncroft in the preliminary round put it up to Castledermot for long periods. Maybe that dented their confidence. Maybe now Castledermot are looking at Larry's and looking at the semi-final.
Or maybe Suncroft are quite decent.
Oh yeah. No bias, lads. No bias.
I did.
Let's have a look. Salins. We have to mention Salins as well, because another good performance by them. 3 wins out of 3, and certainly the Dalton brothers are playing very well. Luke Killian is playing very well, also, and indeed Big Darragh Mangan at midfield. Real powerhouse, and I'm sure I know he might have had some involvement with the Kildare seniors last year rather. He might very well be back again in 2026. So the way it will work is that Ellistown versus Suncroft and 2 Mile House versus Brown Towers. Ger, Ellistown versus Suncroft.
Yeah, I'm afraid to say anything bad about Suncroft now for fear of Richard jumping on me here. So I'm going to just say Suncroft.
And Seamus.
Seamus, well, sure, it's Destiny and too. Absolutely, yeah. And look, Suncroft, they've done really well to only lose the league slip. I mean, that's there's no shame in losing the league slip in the group stages there. That they won the 2 matches that they really had to win. And Sean Downing's playing out of his skin. Owen Lawless is having a good season as well. So they are not without their chances in that one whatsoever. Ellistown, obviously, they're kind of riding the coattails of that wonderful victory that they had against St. Lawrence's in the preliminary rounds. That kind of set them up. And then again, they probably won their key battle. Milltown and Rathangan were always likely to be beyond them. So it was the game between themselves and Straffan that was going to really decide who progressed into the preliminary quarterfinal in that group. And they won that one quite convincingly. So there are 2 sides on a bit of a crest of a wave. And yeah, it's a one that you wouldn't want to be calling again. There's a lot of fence sitting now as we move into the knockout stages. It's hard to decide for teams who are coming in a good form, and that's one that's a tough one to call. And yeah, probably no easier than against 2 Mile House and Towers.
That's 2 dogged teams.
Yeah, and it's kind of both sides have been a little bit up and down. I haven't seen either of them, so I'm only kind of going on reports. The 2 Mile House have had patches in games. They came back against St. Lawrence's. They came storming back in the second half after a nightmare first half, but just left a little bit too late. And they have kind of when you look through that 2 Mile House team, they have a lot of good players. Even getting on a bit now. Peter Kelly, Chris Healy is back there. Marcus Kiley, he's another one who was in around the Kildare setup last year, and I think he'd only arrived back into the GAA world really after a spell in the Leinster Rugby Academy, but then I think someone told me that he might have already played 1 GAA match before he was called in to a bit of Kildare training last year. And there was only a reserve match, I think, as well, that he played for 2 Mile House. So he is somebody, we're talking about Darragh Mangan there for Salins. Marcus Kiley is not too far behind him in terms of physique and power around the centre of midfield. And Tony O'Connor is another one who's had a spell with a different sport as well, and is a real athletic kind of guy there to have in the middle third round, whether it's wing back or wing forward. And David Craddock as well, the goalkeeper who keeps scoring, penalty that he took away last week as well after. I think he's top scored maybe 6 or 7 points in the game as well. So yeah, all around, there'll be very close games there around Towers. As I said, I haven't seen them, and maybe the other lads can talk more about them. But they're a side who will be in the mix as well. And one of our other colleagues was maybe mentioning that if they go into that kind of other half of that quarterfinal draw, then maybe you couldn't rule out Towers getting a bit of momentum behind them and going all the way to the final. I'm not sure if that suggestion got much kind of credence between some of us, but they're a dogged side as well. But just a small, and let Tommy talk maybe a bit more about Towers, who he's seen them more. But just look ahead to that other quarterfinal league slip in Milltown. That's going to be a cracking game. That will be a really, really good game. There are 2 sides who are flying, and that's definitely one to look forward to on the weekend after next. But 2 good games this weekend first.
Absolutely. Those 2 games are Ellistown versus Suncroft on Sunday in Cedars and Conless Park at 2 o'clock. 2 Mile House versus Brown Towers on Saturday in Cedars and Conless Park at 5:15. And you can see both those games on Clubber TV, and indeed there will be coverage on KFM, as indeed there will be of the senior preliminary quarterfinals as well, both on Clubber TV and coverage on KFM. Let's have a look at the loading and lifting Kildare Forklifts Kildare Nationalist Intermediate Football Championship Team of the Week, Ger, once again.
Yeah, so again, a tough task to pick all these. There's a lot of texts and WhatsApp messages been flying over the last few days before nailing down this 15 players. But Matthew Farrelly of Sallins is in goal, Conor Bolton of Cullen, Gavin Farrell of Castledermot, and Chris Phillips of Suncroft in the full-back line. Conor O'Shea of Milltown, Emmett O'Keefe of Castledermot, and Mikey Troy of Suncroft in the half-backs, with a midfield partnership then of Donica Kinch of Castledermot and Tom Martin of Suncroft. Sam Savage, once again from Rathangan, is in the team. Paul Bell of Kilcullen and Adam Keneally also, I think, for a second week in a row of 2 Mile House there in the half-forward line. Jack Barrett in top form for League Slip. He's top of the right there with the outstanding Colin Dalton, who's maybe vying with Colin Moore maybe for the player of the weekend over the full course of the 2 championships. An outstanding performance from him, 11 points in that win for Salons over Down Towers. And then the lineup then completed by Ben Curran of Milltown.
Yes, indeed. So, as Ger says, there was plenty of debate before the final 15 were selected, and there could have been another 15 that could have gone in there as well. But that's our loading and lifting Kildare Forklifts, Kildare Nationalist Intermediate Football Championship Team of the Week. Tommy, let's have a look then at the Junior Championship, the Tom Cross Junior Football Championship. We're now at the quarter-final stage in the Junior Championship. Athgarvan versus Castle Mitchell, Ballymore versus Kappa. How do you see that one, those two going?
Yeah, I mean, last weekend I was obviously going on and on and on and on about that Rat Coffee Robertstown game.
Not like you.
I was delighted I had it over there on Friday night because it was great. I would crack. There was 10 goals, it was 4 penalties, it was just madness. I met John Kwan coming out, who was commentating for a clubber, and he just caught my eye and he came over and he said under 12 football. And he didn't mean the standard. He just said that's what you see, just goals. It was great entertainment. Rat Coffee, you have to hand it to Robertstown as well. They still put up 3-10 against a really impressive Rat Coffee team. Who, again, I said it last week, and I remember when we finished the pod, I was thinking, yes, did I put in Rat Coffee as number 2 in the Junior Championship? And I did, because I said in my own head I had them as closest rivals to Grange. Very impressed with them again last week against Robertstown. Saying that, they did ship 3-10 against a Robertstown forward line that probably weren't firing as much as they have done in previous games. A lot of balls dropped into keepers' hands, balls gone wide. But they never stopped, Robertstown. They just never stopped. They never gave in. That's why Rat Coffee nearly had to score 7 goals, because Robertstown just kept coming back at them. But so they're obviously, Rat Coffee are going on into the semi-finals now, where they'll face Ballymore or Kappa. That's going to be a great game. Just looking at the scores even last night, I think Kappa have had 16 or 17 different scores this year. So it shows the depth of their squad and the danger they possess in different parts of the field. We see Jack Mulligan as well, really kind of hitting form and getting better as the games go on. We knew from last year and the year before how good he can be. They're up against Ballymore, but you wonder now, have they had the same tests as Kappa have had, being in that Group A, losing the one big test they had to Grange, albeit by a couple of points. So I think Ballymore will be looking forward to that game, as they want to see where they are themselves. They didn't get out of Division 4 this year, Ballymore, after being relegated. That was disappointing from them. They are a big club, they're a proud club, so they will have their eye on that semi-final.
Yeah, they must be a concern for them, the concession of goals. I saw the closing stages, or most of the second half last week against Castle Mitchell. They conceded 4 goals and conceded them, more so than Castle Mitchell created them, I suppose. Yeah, so that must be a concern for Ballymore.
It would be, but even at times against Grange, against that serious Grange forward line, Ballymore defended quite well. They did, because they looked up for that game, and they looked well drilled and they looked in good form. So it's going to be really close. Kappa are the ones who kept Ballymore in Division 4 this year. Kappa are the ones that got promoted out of it with some great results. So I don't know how that's going to go, to be completely honest, but I wouldn't be surprised if Kappa did turn Ballymore over. Athgarvan Castle Mitchell is the other one, and Athgarvan are absolutely flying still. They obviously had that one loss to Rat Coffee, but they won their other 4 matches. and a couple of great results. Again, another team with a deep squad and quite a young squad as well. So if whatever happens at Garvin this year, they know themselves, the young players they have coming through, like Ewan Brown there now at the moment, coming in, like he's going to be a really exciting prospect for the future. And they've obviously Jordan Nolan McNally is their main man, but they're coming up against a Castle Mitchell team who, they had that big win against Kill, but then they got turned over heavily by Grange, and I think that's still sticking in all of our minds when we think about Castle Mitchell. But at the same time, we know the players that they have between obviously the Harrises and the likes of Ray Kavanagh and these lads. So I think at Garvin probably have enough to win that, but I think that'll be really tight. That will be really tight. Castle Mitchell will show up.
Okay, so the quarterfinals of the Town Cross Junior Football Championship is at Garvin versus Castle Mitchell. That's on Friday night in Cedars at Condas Park at 8 o'clock. And Ballymore Eustace versus Kappa on Saturday in Mangard Park 1 at 3:30 p.m. And in the junior quarterfinal, Artlock versus Kildangan. That's on Saturday in Mangard Park at 2 o'clock. For the semi-finals, then it's Coffey versus the winners of Ballymore Eustace and Kappa, and Grange versus the winners of Garvin and Castle Mitchell. And the junior A, the semi-finals are Robertstown versus Artlock and Kildangan, and Ballykelly versus Kill. That's in a couple of weeks' time as well. Thursday the 18th, those two games are actually. I suppose the team most disappointed, Tommy, just before we move on, Robertstown, will they be most disappointed that they're in the junior A?
Yeah, they will be disappointed that they're in the junior A. Yeah, they just, they put in some really good performances this year, and you see those forwards I mentioned before, that like the DJ Percival and Brian Kennedy. Robertstown again, they always find themselves in the knockouts of the junior championship, always. Now the last couple of years they maybe got the easier group. Last year they were just in with Ellistown and they were able to hammer every other team, which worked out well for them. They're going to be devastated to miss out, because if you stick Robertstown into Group A, maybe they get through. But it is disappointing for them.
Okay, Ger, the loading and lifting Kildare forklifts Town Cross Kildare Nationalist junior team of the week. You can give us a line out.
Yeah, just very quick, just before I mention that, Pat, just to say a word for the three teams there who had massive score differences against Artlock, Kildangan and Ballykelly. Just to praise them, I suppose, for fulfilling all the fixtures, because there's been a lot of walkovers, I think, over the last number of years by various teams in the junior championship, and in very, very trying circumstances, those three teams that completed their fixtures, they'll obviously go into the junior A championship. It's probably not going to get a whole lot easier for them going up against Kill and Robertstown, who'll be big favourites there, but I think they deserve a bit of praise for doing it. We often talk about the very top level of the game, but those ones that are battling away and trying to keep football going in their clubs in trying circumstances deserve a bit of praise as well, and maybe there's something that can be done. I'm sure we'll have a proper chat about football and championship structures when the season dies down. We have a bit more time in our podcast, but yeah, there's something. It'd be nice if something could be done for those clubs to help them along. But yeah, just wanted to make that note.
Well said.
Just to move into the Junior Football Championship Team of the Week then, the Loading and Lifted Junior Football Championship Team of the Week, of course. Jack Nolan of Castle Mitchell in goal, Keith Holligan of Grange and Paul Huntington also of Grange in the full-back line, alongside James Keeley of Robertstown, Chris Shields of Rathcoffey, Brian Cullen of Grange and Conor Harris of Rathcoffey in the halfbacks, with Michael Stewart Byrne of Ballymore alongside Adam Tierney of Rathcoffey in midfield, Dara Byrne of Ballykelly, Jack Mulligan of Kappa and Tom Moriarty of Rathcoffey in the half forwards, with Simon Murphy of Ballymore, Ethan O'Donoghue of Rathcoffey and also of Rathcoffey Joey Tolman completing the full forward line.
There we go. That's our loading and lifting Junior Football Championship Team of the Week, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of debate on that as well. Well, Richard, we're now going to move into something that you have a great interest in. That's, of course, as overall scorers, and let's look at the Senior Football Championship first of all. The Joe Manamoto Senior Football Championship. Colin Moore tops, Owen Cully, Owen Bagnall, Brian McLaughlin, Alex Byrne. Is that maybe as you might expect there?
Yeah, well, I suppose the thing that stands out is maybe Colin Moran again with that 321 for such a young lad, topping those charts. Owen Cully, obviously, as we mentioned, he's played his last game, so he's not going to finish top, but he's had a great year as well. Just looking at the scores from play, which my eyes tend to go to the right hand side rather than the left hand side. in terms of, you know, who might be putting their hand up for Brian Flanagan and that. And, you know, just interesting as well to see 2 Johnstown Bridge players in the top 3, you know, which I think shows how good a year they've had, and particularly from a 2-pointer perspective in the case of Dara Sloan, and also Sam Doran has got a couple of 2-pointers as well, and also a couple of good goals as well. So, you know, they're doing pretty well. Looking down the list, you know, is there any club there maybe that, you know, aren't scoring enough from play or don't have that threat? You know, of the top 4, probably you have to go down quite a bit to get to Aaron Brown for Selbridge on 110. So they'll be looking maybe for a bit more from play, I think, going forward. Nace have got Kerwin already in there, although he didn't start the championship really. Ryan Sinke in there. Sarsfields of Carl Hartley. I'm a bit surprised Ben Lopeman maybe isn't a bit higher for Sarsfields, but, you know, just in terms of how I think about how well he's been playing. But you know, Sarsfields have plenty of scoring range as well. So, you know, yeah, Selbridge kind of stands out a little bit in that they're reliant on Aaron Brown, and, you know, even he is a little bit down the list in terms of scoring from play.
Okay, the intermediate top scorers, Jerry, you might have a look at that one then. Sam Savage of Rathangan is the top man there. James Dalton coming in from nowhere. Fionn Downing, of course. Jack Barrett, you would expect as well. And Gavin Keating and Jay O'Brien, you'd expect, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I suppose if you follow on from Richard's point about looking at clusters of players who are scoring from open play, your eye is drawn to a trio of Salons players in the top 6 there from open play. The 2 Dalton brothers are shooting the lights out at the moment, and you know, Colin, you expect Colin to have really hit the ground running in this championship after such a good debut inter-county season. But if anything, he's been outshone slightly by his brother James, certainly when it comes to the scores. 5-18 from play is an outstanding total, and we spoke about him, was it a couple of weeks ago, when it's Ballyteague, that very easily a couple of those points got to be more goals as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare. League step, those duo Barrett and Lawler, they caused Nurney an awful lot of problems at the weekend. They'll have a much tougher test in the weeks to come now if they are to progress further in the championship, obviously. But they're 2 very kind of nippy, intelligent forwards, not big men by any means, but certainly very skillful and intelligent players who know how to find space close to the goal and then can take their opportunity as well. So yeah, good to see those 2 there. League step and Salons are dominating the open score side of things, but Sam Savage, another one in there as well. He's the one, and that top 6 from a different club as well. Top overall scorer as well, and a very solid open play score as well. So Sam Savage is definitely having an excellent championship. And I suppose it's the question now: can these players step it up now when they come into the real games that matter, up against more competitive teams, and when it counts more, when the knockout football is there. So yeah, there's some good standout players there.
And Richard, some of those points for James Dalton, both of us remarked, those could have been goals.
Yeah, I think we maybe overplay that a little bit. There was one game where certainly he had, I think, about 4 of his points were, you know, just over the crossbar. But, you know, he's in such brilliant form, and just, I suppose, echoing the point. I think Colin Dalton the other night, I mean, I was privileged to be there to see that. He was like, you know, he was a cheat code almost. It was like he was playing against under 14s at times. Just the conditioning of someone coming from that inter-county setup, and, you know, I mean, I'm a huge fan of his. The way he adapted to inter-county football this year, I think, went under the radar a little bit. You know, I think that was an outstanding season that he's just had, and I think he's going to be a huge player for Kildare going forward. But just generally, Salons looked like a senior team, the way they were set up, the fitness of them. You know, they had danger from all different angles. So, you know, I'm really impressed with them against Towers at the weekend. Even though Towers actually put up a decent show, you know, they went down by 10 points, which was the closest anyone's got to Salons so far.
Yeah, and Salons were missing a couple of players as far as I can recall on that one as well.
Round Towers could do with a couple of players on this score charts as well. Hugely reliant on Jay at the moment, whereas last year I remember they had quite a spread of scores. So, you know, they have a couple of huge games coming up, and I was going to mention it earlier as well. If they can get over 2 Mile House, they have their eyes set on Rathangan in that quarterfinal. Rathangan did a job on them last year in the quarterfinal, and Towers were devastated after that game because they played so well, conceded 4 goals, I think. So that's something to keep an eye on, that intermediate side.
Big local derby as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you have the microphone still, Tommy. The junior overall scores then after the group stages. Not, I suppose, not surprisingly, you have the likes of DJ Percival, Niall Murphy rather, Nolan McNally, Bergen, Kennedy. Players you would expect to see close to the top of the scoring charts.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think it does depend as well that that week off that Fionn Bergen had. He didn't get any scores from that week, but then last week he was kept scoreless from play against Castle Mitchell. I'm pretty sure he only scored 3 points from frees. So these things as well, the people that are watching the scores charts from a player's point of view, and I know that they are watching it. I think the likes of DJ now isn't going to be overly happy when I just remind people that I don't include the Junior A Championship when it comes to the top scorer charts. So, Richard, stop shaking your head, Richard, because I know you agree with me.
I do. I'm just thinking of the text you're going to get over the next couple of weeks.
Because last year it was a great battle up the top. But there were players that were obviously in the Junior Football Championship proper, like Fionn Bergen against Paul Kerwin from Kill. That was a great battle. Paul had to score 3 points, I think, in the final to get the trophy. But you can see DJ Percival has after having an unbelievable year, 437 with 329 of that from play. The 3 obviously being he scored a penalty the other night. Niall Murphy is rocketed up there as well. Himself and Simon Murphy both having a great year for Ballymore, and they're 2 pretty serious forwards. Jordan Nolan Mullally has been one of the standout players of the year again. Going to be a huge player for Rathgarvan if they're looking to progress in the championship. We can see Fionn Bergen there. You can guarantee Fionn will be notching up a few places as the championship goes on. Going down as well, Michael O'Connor, probably somebody that's been a little bit unlucky not to get in our team of the week a couple of times. I put in Ethan O'Donoghue this week, and it was a toss-up between himself and Michael O'Connor. Michael's put in some good performances. I think Ethan at the certain matches is more influential slightly when it comes to overall play. But Michael O'Connor has been fantastic, as is Joey Toman from Rathcoffey. You can see the 2 Harrises on both lists as well. Will always be there with the scores they put up. Keane Scanlon, another lad coming in under the radar for Rathgarvan this year, is having a good season. Another one to keep an eye on. So, it's a great battle. These score charts are good crack, and I know from the bloody messages that I get that the players most certainly keep an eye on them. And if I'm even 1 point off, I'm told. So.
Yeah. That's it's now was it Laura Murtagh's grandfather, the great Babs Keaton, who said it's now senior hurling, lads. It's now senior hurling. Anyway, so that's our look at the hurling and men's football for this week. And as I say, all those matches will be shown live on Clubber Sport. There will be coverage on KFM, and don't forget there will be full coverage in the Kildare Nationalist on Tuesday of next week. And if you look at the Kildare Nationalist of this week, you will see coverage of all the matches that took place last week. So moving along then to the LGFA, the Kildare Ladies Club Championships, that has snuck up on us very, very quickly. And on Tuesday night, the quarterfinals of the Joe Malamotor Senior Football Championships took place, and the results were as follows: St. Lawrence's 4-8, Confey 1-8, Easttown 3-12, Kill 1-16, Kilcullen 1-8, Suncroft 7 points, and Sarsfield's a big win there in a bit high scoring game. Sarsfield 7-12, Maynooth 4-8, and all of that means that in the Joe Malamotor's LGFA Senior Football Championship semi-finals, they'll be played on the 16th of the night, which is on Tuesday next. It's St. Lawrence's versus Sarsfields and Kilcullen versus Easttown. Ger, where would you see those going?
Yeah, I was trying to pick a ladies' match to go to last night, and I ended up plumping for one of the intermediate games just because I thought the 4 winners of the senior would come through like that, and I thought it would lead to kind of 4 very good semi-final. So, yeah, it's Easttown, I suppose they had a little bit of a stutter early in the championship, but look to be back to full strength now, and they're obviously the ones to catch. They've set the standard over the last few years, and don't look like they are in any mood to relinquish their championship. The other 3 challengers, Sarsfields, they seem to have come on a little bit this year again, and maybe they'll be the favourites to come through to face off against Easttown again in the final. Kilcullen and St. Lawrence's have made great strides over the last few years, and Kilcullen have come from, I think, Junior B all the way up to winning a Division 1 title last year, and then competing in a senior semi-final. They're knocking very hard on the door and doing incredible work out there, and they have a wonderful day coming up now on Saturday week when they open their Field of Dreams there. So it'd be a great celebration if they had a team in a senior final to help around that time as well. But yeah, it's tough maybe to see past Easttown and Sarsfields for the final, but yeah, Lawrence's and Kilcullen will do absolutely everything in their power to prevent that.
Yeah, indeed. So, Tommy, Lawrence's and Sarsfields, that's the finalists for the last 2 years. Lawrence's were in the final last year, Sarsfields the previous year. That should be a tight affair.
Yeah, and I suppose it's no big surprise that Lawrence's and Sarsfields are at this stage, gone forward into the semi-finals, because you look at teams that come out of the pack over the past few years. The challenge Leedstown, we see the emergence of Kilcullen this year, because Cullen have such a good young squad. Going back to, I think, the Kildare minor team from maybe 3 years ago was stacked with Kilcullen players. And even this year, you see young Queeve Egan coming up. She's a fantastic forward for them as well. So it is, like, again, Sarsfields, the likes of Ashley Norahue, who's on our screen there, the addition of her for the last couple of years, and the intercounty experience and the intercounty training that she's getting, is huge for her, and for Sarsfields, because Sarsfields, again, a lot of younger players coming through. It's going to be really interesting to see, because everybody is just waiting to see a proper wobble from Easttown. But I mean, their experience with Grania as captain this year, and she, from the club point of view, the way she's playing, you saw her last year in the final, how she performed as well. She's such a super player, and all of her focus obviously this year was able to be on the club game. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on where those semi-finals are going to be, and the fixtures, etc. Should be interesting.
Yeah, as far as I know, it's the home team. St. Lawrence's versus Sarsfields will be the home team, as far as I know. Lurries will be the home team, and then Kilcullen versus Easttown. But I could be wrong. We've got confirmation on that. But those semi-finals are on Tuesday, the 16th of the 9th, with the final then the first weekend in October. The relegation final will be semi-finals rather. Confey versus Maynooth, Kill versus Suncroft. Just one comment, lads. The senior intercounty all-star nominees were out during the week. Alicia Lenihan from Kill and Kildare was nominated. I think that was a disgrace. There should have been at least 3 or 4 more other Kildare players on that list. I don't know whether anybody else would agree with me. Tommy?
Absolutely.
Help me.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, Kildare, people are looking at Kildare this year going into that championship, and you have to remember, a Leinster championship, you're coming up against Meath and Dublin. But either way, you're guaranteed to be in the All-Ireland series. If you finish bottom, it's all ranking and stuff. But some of the performances they put in this year, I mean, that Armagh performance alone, and even the performance against Kerry in that quarter final, and some of the younger players, I'm not going to start picking out a couple of them, because it wouldn't be fair. But one nomination, I think it's a little bit of a slap in the face, to be honest. I know Alicia is more than deserving. She's had a fantastic year. But I don't know how these decisions are made when you see the likes of Waterford getting 3 nominations. No disrespect to them, but I know we're very biased when we speak about it.
Well, I think we're honest as well. We're honest as well. I mean, Kildare beat Dublin in the league. They beat Meath in the league. Probably should have at least drawn or beaten Waterford in the league. They ran Dublin and Meath quite close to the championship. You talked about the Armagh game. Probably a better performance could have been against Meath. You saw that game as well, Ger, in the All-Ireland series. And then, of course, a mighty performance. You were at that one, Ger, down in Tralee.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and they really had Kerry rocked in the opening quarter, and it's a real kind of I suppose mouth-watering prospect of what they could do next year. In the second year with Pat Sullivan there, Pat obviously just finding his feet there, getting to know the players this year, and that's Armagh performance. Just to echo what Tommy said, certainly in covering ladies football for the last probably 15 years or more. Even I don't think I've ever seen a Kildare team to play at such a level. Considering the opposition going into it's pretty much a knockout game against an Armagh side, well used to playing the latter stages of the All-Ireland Senior Championship, to go and produce a win like that was outstanding. And I think Armagh have 2 nominations for All-Stars as well. So that kind of leaves you scratching your head. And just to echo as well what Tommy said, huge congratulations to Alicia as well, because she is thoroughly deserving of that, and was a real leader. She scored the goal against Armagh, obviously, but was outstanding right throughout the year for Kildare as a proper captain for that team. But just a pity she didn't have a couple more teammates with her.
That's it. Rant over. And looking then at the Joe Mallon Motors LGFA Intermediate Football Championship, the semi-finals there are Ballina versus Carberry and Naces versus Kappa. And in the relegation semi-final, Raheens versus Kilcock, Leixlip versus Clane. And then just one other than the Nace Racecourse LGFA Junior A Football Championship, the semi-final, Selbridge versus Salans, Nafina versus Athy. And the relegation semi-final, Rathangan versus Kildangan Nerney, Milltown versus Moorfield. And we'll have coverage of all those games, and we'll be discussing them next week as well. Ger, we had some Kildare players on international duty at soccer and rugby during the week, and obviously somebody who made a great name for himself on Tuesday night for the under-21s as well, and that's the man from down the south of the county, of course, and the manager is from Ballyshannon as well, or well, he's living there.
Living there while he's there that long now at this stage. I think he's a naturalised Kildare man at this stage now, over 2 decades, I think, down in Kildare for Jim Crawford. But yeah, the less said, obviously, the better about the senior team. Nathan Collins, unfortunately, the captain, the Leixlip man, not able to inspire the team, and it was a pretty dismal defeat. But if Irish football supporters needed a pick-me-up, it arrived, I suppose, shortly afterwards, albeit, I suppose, a 1-0 home victory against Andorra isn't exactly setting the pulses racing either, but it took the introduction of Michael Noonan off the bench, and he wasted absolutely no time in making his impact. A brilliant goal that he scored from 25 yards, and the youngest ever goal scorer for Ireland at under 21 level, and just another record to his name. He's a hugely talented young man and has a big future ahead of him. Of course, in the short term, he's going to probably help Shamrock Rovers to another Premier Division title. He'll have the European knockout stages then in the Conference League as well, and has the Under-17 World Cup coming up as well, and a couple of games with the Under-21s as well. They play England in November after a home game against Slovakia in Cork in October as well. So he's going to be a busy man. But I also mentioned to Cathal McCarthy as well, because we spoke about him on a number of occasions in the podcast in the last few weeks, and he's had an incredible rise over the last few weeks and months to go over to Hull there at the start of July and make his championship debut already, and now make his under-21 debut just a week or two after 2019 is an incredible statement of him. And he actually went off for Noonan to come on to replace him, but it was more, I think, Jim Crawford looking to get a forward player on to go and push for a win rather than anything to do with Cathal McCarthy's performance. And I think, he'll be involved for many years to come with the under-21s and hopefully onto the senior level then as well.
Certainly will indeed, and best of luck to all of them. Of course, best wishes to Hayley Nolan, who will be starting the championship over in the UK. Hayley, of course, from Kill. I think that starts this weekend as well. Ruth Campbell started for the rugby again. Okay, it was a defeat against the All Blacks, but still she put in a great performance again, Ger.
Yeah, just one other soccer player to mention, Della Cooper-Gray as well, who's involved with Shamrock Rovers, I think, in the FAO Cup semi-finals this weekend as well. She's only a young girl, has made a couple of appearances for Rovers this year, and just her first taste of senior football. But yeah, it would be great if they can reach the FAO Cup final there. I think it's the last involvement of a Kildare player in the Women's FAO Cup. But yeah, Ruth Campbell then as well, obviously kind of a heavy defeat for the women's rugby team against New Zealand, who were in absolutely no mood or humour to give even an inch there against Ireland. So it's a difficult quarter-final now against France, and probably up against it there again. But there were some great pictures as well. Aisling Highlands took some pictures that were included in our website story there about Ruth, and I think a lot of members from the Nace Club as well, and Barnhall and Athy as well. Obviously the game in Brighton, it was very appealing to make the trek over. I think the Nace supporters got a lot of attention, dressed up as bananas and different things, and by all accounts they were still on the go coming back over on the way home back from Ireland. So even though the result didn't go for Ireland, they certainly enjoyed their weekend. But yeah, it was fantastic for Ruth now to go into the quarter-final, and fingers crossed Ireland can put up a better showing and at least make that game against France competitive.
And sticking with soccer, it's nice to see a former Irish international, second most highest capped player, 134 caps, Shay Given, being involved in a big project out at Goffs there. Paddle tennis is a paddle tennis. Yeah, you have a big interview with him in the Nationalist this week. He's certainly promoting this. He's gone in for planning permission. He's promoting it, and it seems to be a game that people enjoy.
Yeah, well, that was all your hard work, Pat, calling on your old FAI contacts to be able to get a one-to-one interview like that with Shay Given was fantastic, and it's we had some of it in the paper this week, and a more extended version is online there on the Kildare Nationalist website if people want to go and read it. But yeah, this sport of paddle is kind of taking over the world, really. I don't think it's really grown in Ireland probably in the same extent that it has certainly around Europe. But if Shay Given has his way, there's going to be a very spectacular looking arena to be built there in Goffs, planning permission pending, of course, and hopefully that does go through, because it looks like something that will be hugely beneficial to the area. And obviously Shay Given is a very serious individual and has a great sporting background as well, so when he's involved in it, you know that it should be something good. So yeah, let's hope that does come to fruition, and what Shay Given speaks about in that interview does happen.
Yeah, indeed. Well, another big event which happened in Kildare over the weekend was, of course, the at the K Club. And Tommy, I think you might have taken the Sunday off to go and have a look at that particular one. What a performance by Rory McIlroy that put on the 18 to, I suppose, bring a share of the lead with Joachim Lagergren. That was some shot. Some put, I suppose you might say, not shot.
No, but you're right. I mean, to do that on the, we were so lucky that we had a great spot up against the rope. We waited for a good while for Rory to come down, but we got the groups before it. But it's amazing when you're watching something, when you're live at a golf event. You know, when you're watching on television, you have, you know, the helicopter view and you can see everything and you know what the contour of the green is going to be. But when you're at it, depending on the distance away, you don't know where the ball's going. You have a fair idea where the hole is. So if you actually listen back to it, there's a split, there's a kind of a silence. There's not a huge big whoa as it's going up towards the hole, because nobody had a clue. And then it dropped. And it was the best feeling, because we all wanted to hang around and stay for longer. And then the steward was in front of me. Shout out to him, because I'm pretty sure he was very interested when he overheard me talking about Naas and Sarsfields. So I think he's definitely a GAA fan. But he told me, he said, hang tight there, because there's 3 playoff holes, but it's going to be played the 18 3 times. And if it's still level after 3, they're going to replace the pin position. So stay here. It's not going to be the 17th or anything. But the drama then on the 3rd playoff hole, even after Rory had, you know, kind of scotched the shot, but it was brilliant. I mean, there's not too many opportunities you get to see something like that live. Great experience, apart from the car park.
Absolutely, you know, great performance, and it's great to see a big international event like that in the county of Kildare. Well done to everybody at the K Club. Another big international event in Kildare this weekend, of course, is the Champions Weekend. That's at the Curragh. Richard, you took a good look at that, I presume. I think we'll have to get Niall. I think we'll have to get Niall Carew or Slippers.
My interest in horse racing died as a 13 or 14-year-old when I used to go up there to the Curragh every race day to pick up litter. And we had one summer up there where I weeded the last 8 furlongs, if I remember right. So, for some reason, I haven't had too much interest in going back.
I think we'll have to get
it is a big weekend though for the Curragh. It is. I know Evan Arkwright puts in a huge amount of work there, and that Champions Weekend has kind of grown into something really, really big for the Curragh. Obviously shared with Leopardstown over the weekend, but Sunday and the Curragh as well as the last kind of big meeting of the season with the flat season for them. And yet they do a huge amount of work trying to push and attract spectators. Probably not getting the amount of people through the gates that they would like in general. But this weekend, along with the Derby, is probably the 2 biggest weekends that they have in the calendar these days. And I think for those with an interest in flat racing, this is probably as good as it gets really for the season in Ireland.
Yeah, 4 Group 1 races. It's an 8-race card. Starts at 1:30. The big one, as far as I could make out, is at 4:25. It's the Como Group International Irish St. Leger. I suppose the local interest there would be with Dermot Weld, who trains in the Curragh. Harbour Wind is the horse there, but obviously the O'Briens will have plenty of interest in that. So that's an 8-race card at the Curragh. The big one there is the this weekend. It's the Champions Weekend. There's one on Leopardstown on the Saturday as well. So interesting times, and I'm sure the rain, if it falls as it is at the moment, the going will be very soft indeed. I think that's it, lads. I think that's it. Ger, I just wanted to point out, I know you have the report in online on the 65th minute, and when Michael Noonan came on and then he scored a goal and he was made man of the match. A couple of weeks ago, I had a player coming on and scoring 4 points and 2 and a 2-pointer, and he couldn't get on our team of the week. So I think there has to be a real stewards inquiry as to why Austin Nevin could not be included the way that Michael Noonan was included. I want an explanation, lads.
Pat, I'm getting you a T-shirt that has Austin Nevin fan club across the front. I'm telling you, before this pod is out, Pat Costello will be wearing an Austin Nevin T-shirt.
Well, we did give a shout out to Richie Whelan Menswear a couple of weeks ago, and I think, Tommy, you had discussions with them, and we very well may be wearing something very snazzy from Richie Whelan Menswear very, very shortly. So this week I'm giving a shout out to Joe Mallon Motors. So I expect cars to be landing on our doorstep. That's it. Thanks very much once again to Ger, to Tommy, and indeed to Richard. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy your football. Best of luck to it, and your hurling, and your camogie, or whatever you're playing, and indeed your horse racing, because Richard will be there. He'll be weeding the grass on the 8 furlongs out from the start. Goodbye for now.